GM, KEP Posse, Tuesday, February 25th, 2025. And this is our Tuesday weekly meeting for Kianga Ellis Projects 25, the Rural Rapid Response Network. And I am your hostess with the mostest, Kianga Ellis. And thank you for joining or checking this out later on the recording. I have a ton to cover today, really a lot. And so it's probably going to be the entire 2 hours. We're scheduled from 1 to 3 East Coast USA time on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Sometimes it's less than that. Last week we had no meetings, and so there was no time. But this week, at least for today, we have from now until 3 p.m. And Thursday, please follow at Kianga Ellis on X is probably the best place to get the news about Thursday's meeting, because I am hoping to be in Augusta, Maine for a hearing at 9 a.m., which is 2 hours from where I am now on the coast. And there's supposed to be some weather, but this was postponed from a couple of weeks ago, a hearing having to do with energy. And there was a snowstorm, so that was canceled and postponed. So all of which is to say, stay tuned about Thursday, because it'll just be a bit of a logistics situation, as I am still a bit clumsy with all the technology that enables this live stream to happen. So what is the Rural Rapid Response Network? I'll tell you how this meeting is going to be organized. I want to do a review of some of the things we've been covering for the past, it's almost 2 months now. It's almost 2 months. I believe this is the 10th meeting. And so I want to, just kind of set the table, bring everyone new up to speed, and talk about going forward. And that's going to be, obviously every week, every day, every meeting matters. So I'll be covering a lot. But the first thing I should just say is that to the question of what is the Rural Rapid Response Network, it's important to understand that it is an idea at this stage. It is an idea. It is something that I am developing in public real time. I decided to set up this live stream, this new channel under the Kianga Ellis Projects umbrella, to just open kimono instead of researching it to death, as I want to do, instead of studying and thinking and talking. I needed to take some concrete action as a response to, I'll just call it the moment. And we'll talk a little bit about the moment. So at 1:03, let me share a screen that will just be a little bit of context for the beginning of what we're doing. All right. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, so a week ago, I posted this on X, anticipating that, I would cover it last week, and I decided to pause. As much as this is something that's being built out in public, I guess last week felt like it was worthwhile to take some of the work offline and think a bit through some of the things. And so that's what I did. But what we will do today is go through these notes. I have organized slides with these notes. And today, at the end of the meeting, I want to go through each of these bullet points and, react to them, flesh them out, talk to you about, where I am, what I'm thinking. So here's what we wanted to explore, and here's what we're going to get into next in the course of this project, which is the Rural Rapid Response Network. As we're figuring out what exactly could it be, should it be to be useful, valuable, responsive to the moment, what are the activities, what's the structure, all of that. Here were my notes that I wanted to explore and have been meditating on over the past week. Publishing a paper, like a physical, actual piece of paper, a broadsheet for local circulation to provide people in our communities in Maine with an alternative editorial about local and national politics. And this just comes from me reading all of my local press, which is very precious to have local coverage, but hearing just one side in all of the editorials, and I think that lack of diversity of opinion, and this is the huge problem to tackle in terms of preparing for what's coming down the pike in our futures. Flesh out who we are rapidly responding to. So the Rural Rapid Response Network. It's like, okay, who's the network responding to? And if the network starts in one art space, Keongella's Projects 5 in Deer Isle, Maine, what are the operations we can do with that geographic limitation? I'll talk a bit about that when the end of the meeting, when we weren't actually in the slides, and we'll just live sort of, write out some thoughts. Number 4 was, again, within the limitations of geography, time, and finance, what can we do that is valuable from day one, effective and useful rapid response for some critical function or need in the immediate local community? And a lot of the time over the past several weeks, I've spent talking about values, talking about perspective, talking about citizen adjacent action. What can we do with what we have that doesn't rely on central points of failure, short-termism, other sorts of critical dependencies that exist in our current moment? I'm just going to keep saying moment. It probably sounds very pretentious, but it's such a helpful catch-all to describe this, to waves hands around this thing that's happening to all of us. So that was a question that I thought, really tries to bring this conversation, the talking points, a drafting of an ELI 5 down to earth. How do we avoid just being busy to make ourselves feel good or to distract ourselves or to virtue signal? Excuse me. No one has time for this, or at least I don't have time for this. It is my frustration with a lot of status quo ways that people do activism that has prompted me to, start this crazy journey. Number 5, who needs to benefit? What are the priority of needs within our power to address? Number 6, what capacities should Rural Rapid Response Network have in the medium term, which I'm defining 12 to 24 months? And then what are the now capacities we can identify that would build expertise, understanding, and muscle for those medium-term capacities? So with that list, I hope it demonstrates, how I'm thinking about this project, or how I'm thinking about the goals, or identifying the goals. So it's not to show up here and say to you, here's the project. Do you want to be a part of it? These are all the things. It's something that is going to get us to those answers, right? Yes. So on that note, a little bit of review. And I guess before the review, whenever I'm about to say something, whenever I'm about to go deep and get into some feels, I reach for Mr. Carter here. I reach for the president and the bobblehead doll, and it just makes me laugh, lightens the mood. So some changes in how I personally am approaching social media right now, a big shift in what we're going to cover today relative to what I've said in the past. Some of you know that I've been involved in the crypto and blockchain space for a number of years. In fact, discovering or being interested in spending more time learning about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in 2016 is the reason I started my own law practice. So I'm an attorney. I'm admitted in New York State, although now, I mean, I still my practice is still based in New York State. I am based in Maine now, and expanding my practice here. But this is not legal advice, and I don't ever want anyone who watches anything that I say on the internet to think I'm giving legal advice or investment advice. So what I'm going to share to you is neither. It's a personal take and a personal struggle about where that industry is right now, and my own disappointments in a lot of things that I'm seeing. And those tensions, the tension between what drew me into this new frontier and all that I've kind of invested personally in, not invested, I'm not talking about money. I'm not talking about the markets being down, and I'm not talking about the price of Bitcoin. I'm talking about the vision, the belief, the excitement that really was an escape valve. It was a pressure release for me for so many years during tumultuous times over the past, however many years, 7, 8 years. I always had this work that I was doing in cryptocurrency and blockchain as a beacon, as something that parted the clouds and showed me, the God rays beyond the horizon. And I'll be talking about this for 2 hours if I say more. But it's been very, very hard to hold on to that motivation in the space for quite a long time. And I would say that this weekend for me was a major inflection point. And so you won't see me interacting on X as my on my personal handle FHO Money for the time being. And so I'm going to miss a lot of what's happening with Pine Tree Patriots. But this project, the Rural Rabbit Response Network, is still a thing, and the live streams will still continue here on X and posting some of the clips of the highlights. But we're also live streaming on Rumble and YouTube. So those are also places where you can see these meetings. And I'm thinking that going forward, I'd like to see if Rumble is an interesting place to kind of anchor in terms of community. So we'll see about that. But for the time being, it's a big shift in terms of where I want to focus energy, pulling back from X and leaning in more in other places that I will cover in a little bit. And yeah, it was just a kind of yeah, maybe I'll talk more about it another time. I think it would be a bit of a distraction to get into specifically right now. If you're hyper, if you're really super online and you're in crypto, and you'll probably know exactly what I'm talking about. It's in terms of like what particularly this weekend was sort of too much. Yeah, I pride myself on having a high tolerance for pain, which is, I don't know, is it good? Is it bad? But sometimes, yeah, it helps you get through a lot. It helps you persevere. It helps you achieve. But sometimes, I mean, all the time, pain is information. And sometimes the signal is to make a change, make a change. And so here's how I'm thinking about this change. Because of my concerns, I have not wanted to talk about blockchain and tokens and crypto very much on this live stream, or I've wanted to not get into it with this project. Although, if you've seen some of the other meetings, I have I have sort of put a pin in it. Like, we'll get to this. This is the 25-year plan. We need to come up with new ideas. We need to orient our state around the technologies of the future, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, I have kept it since, this is my bread and butter. This is my professional area, both as an attorney and as an entrepreneur. And so it absolutely has always been the thing that I thought would be part of the answer that we're looking for in our individual lives, the answer that our societies are looking for, our governments, how we get out of the moment, fill in the blank in brackets. And, but, there's a lot that's occurring right now that has happened in the past couple of years that have, definitely limited my ability to be full-throated advocating. I've been very clear that I don't want to be a person that is encouraging regular Americans to think that it's gonna solve all their financial problems. It's gonna solve all your financial problems. Uh, I used to educate and advise around crypto as an asset class, as finance, as personal finance, and I stopped doing that about 5 years ago. So it's a little bit of a 180 where I'm gonna go with it now, because I found out when I decided over the weekend that it's just gone too far, and I needed to shift a little. Something needed to change in terms of how I was sustaining myself in doing that work. And I had this idea, a metaphor that really helped me, uh, I think, refocus. And it was this: cryptocurrency, blockchain. I mean, it's just technology. It is a technology. It is a tool. It is a tool like, you know, this pen. This pen is an instrument. I could write you a love letter, or I could write you the worst, horrible takedown that makes you feel like you don't even want to go on. With the same instrument, I could write you something that changes your life, that lets you know you're not alone, that encourages you that weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. It's very powerful. And because it's so powerful, it can bring life or death. So if someone writes that wonderful love letter, we're very glad. We celebrate the pen. The pen is a wonderful instrument. It allowed someone to send me all this love and encouragement. Long live the pen. Now, if someone sent the opposite kind of letter that made me want to end it, and maybe I do end it. Maybe I end it live. Maybe I stream the act live on X as I launch a meme coin, because that is just how dark the times are right now and how serious. Then you might say, "Oh my God, the pen is horrible. The pen is evil. I want nothing to do with pens. I want nothing to do with pens." I think you get where I'm going with this analogy. Um, so what I've decided is that to throw away the pen, to give up on the pen, to disassociate from the pen, as much as it feels like that's like what I should do. As difficult as it may be to go around with a pen at a time like this, when people are going to say, you're holding a pen? Don't you know what pens are? Don't you know that they cause people that they're the reason that people are killing themselves live on the internet? But that's, of course, absurd. That's, of course, absurd. And so I've made just some adjustments that can allow me to focus more on the pen as a tool to write a love letter that brings life, because at the end of the day, it's just an instrument. It's just a technology. If somebody picked up a hammer and smashed in your window, are you going to, like, then not use that hammer to drive in a nail to hold your house together? I mean, of course not. So that's how I'm making sense of it, and I'm bracing myself for doing something, really against the grain. I think it's really probably but I mean, I should be used to that. I mean, I kind of am used to that you are used to that. As more years you've spent in this industry, you're used to the ridicule, you're used to, being this just you're used to a lot. So, I was like, "Okay, that's not that different, younger than any other day." And the second thing I would say that has, convinced me not to put down the pen is, as I continue to do what I've been doing, which I'll review in a moment, of the local meetings, being hyper local, understanding how our state level government is designed, how it operates, how it functions. It's a tough picture. It's a tough picture. If you are someone who's deeply engaged in that work, you're attending your town meetings, you're on the school board, you're very close to local politics, or it's your work. You're in a nonprofit or you're a government agency. You know, if you're coming from not knowing about these things, hello, not paying a lot of attention to how things work, how things operate, who's on first. You're just living in a bubble of your life, your work, your own family and friends, and you just think everything is fine, happening by magic. You kind of, I mean, you're not totally ignorant. You are reading things, you are hearing things, you are maybe seeing some things. I mean, it depends on where you live. It depends on what you how much you get to outside of your own comfort zone, depending on where you sit. Um, but I think many people like me would not know at a visceral level how much we're hanging by a thread, especially in, I mean, rural America, 1,000%, and the vulnerability that we all are facing, regardless of our political affiliations. We are in the same boat, and the storm is upon us. And as I attend and as part of this work for Rural Rapid Response Network, I'm going to as much as I can, right? I'm going to the meetings that are in my town. I'm following along with meetings elsewhere that are live streamed. In particular, we've been following the work of the Maine State Infrastructure Rebuilding and Resilience Commission. And everything that I'm hearing, all the failure, as I said the other week, it's raining failure, and people are desperately clinging to the status quo. I think I understand. I mean, it's probably psychologically impossible, cognitive dissonance. It's psychologically impossible to admit the failure. Even though that's all that anyone talks about, is how much things don't work. But even still within that, there is a reluctance. That is starting to change, but there's been a reluctance to be honest. I know that there's fear that that honesty is gonna put people or someone off sides of whatever is sustaining them, whether that's finance, their job, politics. is very, very threatening to be off sides of that. And so we haven't really seen that much of it until things got so bad that, you know, we're in the moment. And so as much as I, wanted in a way to get a break, put down the pen, get some relief from all the things happening that I don't like, that I'm seeing that are deeply, deeply concerning. Uh, I don't want to say there's nothing else, but I have believed and I have seen a way forward, a way that's positive, a way that's generative, a way that is real, out of the decay, out of the crumbling, out of the brokenness, out of the destruction. And so I think that instead of distancing myself because I have questions. We have questions. I have questions about the industry and people in it, and, I have concerns about manipulation, about yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things to be concerned about. At the end of the day, it's a pen, Kianga, it's a pen. Write your own story with it. If you believe that this pen holds the key to how we are going to fund these things, how we're going to make it when all of our existing structures around operations, governance are being ripped up, ripped out, tossed into the flames. You can like it, you can want it, you cannot like it, you cannot want it. It is occurring. So, on the other side of this, where are we going to be? Where are we going to be tomorrow? Where are we going to be in 2026? Kianga L's Project's 25. Where are we going to be in 2050? So that's what this project is. That's what we're going to focus on here as we explore exactly what a rural rapid response network can be, what it needs to be, and then how to build that is, in my mind, we need the pen. We need the hammer. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. And in order for me to, I think, get back to that belief, get back to that excitement, I personally am going to take an extended pause from engaging on X because it sets me on fire. Every time. It just sets me on fire. And that's good for, I don't know, being on fire, but it's not good for, you know, all the problems we have to solve, all the things we have to prepare for, what we are going to need if there's no one else to fix it for us, if no one else has an answer, if there aren't all the things that we hear about, that I hear about in all of these meetings, these local, municipal, all these meetings, we have a demographics problem, we have a housing problem, we have an infrastructure problem, we have an energy problem, we have no money, we have, everything is funded by federal grants through nonprofits, and we're finding out that that's been a boondoggle. That'll be like a nice way of referring to a bunch of things that are coming out. But on the other hand, as we demolish everything, we've got some real issues on our hands as people in communities. There's like an entire infrastructure that's being blown up right now. And I know in Maine, we don't have, doesn't appear to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't appear that we have people in governance in this state who are at all aligned with the current administration who are all aligned with what's a better way to govern in these United States, you know? We've got folks who will die on the sword to protect what they have in the status quo. I just mentioned our governor, Janet Mills, taking on the president of the United States to his face. That was crazy, you guys. That was unbelievable. But that's how bad that's just how absolutely chaotic and crazy things are right now. There were some very lovely speeches just a few minutes ago in front of the Capitol by uh, folks who are just, you know, just pulling all the heartstrings of how evil it is to try and change, try to really change, not just pretend to change, but to actually completely restructure how we think about democracy in this country, how we think about, you know, everything that we've come to think about. You know, looking back at this, the words that made us, the Constitution. This was like a professor from the Yale Law School, Akil Amar. America's Constitutional Conversation, 1760 to 1840. And I've been threatening to open and read this. I will, to remind myself of, you know, just also just what's true, you know, what is actually true, because law and all of the things we're trying to make sense of are being, you know, this is a popular word, weaponized against us. And who really has the time? How many of us have the expertise to decipher what's legitimate, what's BS? I think my background, excuse me, in law and in finance for, you know, 20 plus years has helped me a lot to embrace, you know, say I embrace America first because, or my entry point has to do with things that are maybe easier for me to see or understand and verify for myself, right? Where I don't have to trust someone else's opinion about what's true because I just happen to have a particular expertise in certain areas. And that's been very, very helpful. But I hear what's being said about the budget. I don't know what's in there. And I'm not going to read it. Are you? So it feels like what's a better choice for me in the limited hours of the day and the limited amount of life force that one has is to spend more of my time on, all right, what are we going to build in the meantime, right? So that wherever you fall on the spectrum of who's doing what to whom, who's a dictator, who's a fascist, who's a Nazi, who's, you know, who's responsible for the oligarchs, wherever you fall in that argument, something is occurring that will define the future. And this pen, this new computing technology, this new way of keeping records, of notarizing records, of knowing the state of the ledger in a decentralized fashion, all the things that are underpinning this industry called blockchain, Web3, crypto. It's like electricity. You know, it's like the next innovation that's going to run the entire future of the world. It just is. You don't have to believe that. It's something that it's just a fact, and I happen to know that fact. And hiding from the pen isn't going to change the fact that the pen has been discovered. The pen has been unleashed. So I think that it's worthwhile. It's enormously worthwhile that we learn how to write with a pen that we insist on the knowledge, on obtaining the knowledge and applying it toward what we value, what we need, and not allow how other people may be using the pen to cut us off from probably our best chance to change things for the better for ourselves and for our communities. Because if we don't do it, I mean, then we're really at the mercy of forces unknown, right? We're really at the mercy of forces unknown. And so, I don't know, this may be ridiculous idea, fanciful hope I have of how we're going to see coalition. I mean, we are seeing a coalition that's historically pretty incredible. Uh, I want to go further and say I want to extend a hand to those who are who here. This T-shirt I want to bring and show you. If this, I'm still a Trump girl. I make no apologies. If this T-shirt like causes you to throw up a little bit in your mouth, then I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you. And I want to just suggest, that maybe it's not all that. Maybe it's not all of that. And that we could all maybe, work on something together. I wore this T-shirt the other day, right? No pain, no Maine. I don't know if you guys, if in the video it was showing the, the state. No pain, no gain. If we could get people away from the propaganda, you don't have to believe on the both sides, you don't have to buy it all hook, line, and sinker to say, okay, just admit some things that are freaking just true. The things that you are talking about when you're pointing fingers at the other side, and if you could suspend disbelief that someone who looks different from you or is from a certain background, that they're not inherently an enemy. I want to test this hypothesis that by working on something novel and new that actually can solve problems for our towns, for ourselves, for our families, for the future of our states, that's going to be more convincing in the end. That's going to attract people that are, maybe we could if we had something like that, something we could see that it could work, that could transform our politics. And I'm not saying we do. I'm not saying we do. I mean, full disclaimer, I struggle. But I think it's worth it. And the moment is so terrible. There's no reason not to. I said, I've been at this for all these years. What else is there? Like the answer to that, like to say that I'm throwing away the pen, then that's a bleak. That's a very, very bleak. That's even more bleak. Did you think it could get more bleak in crypto? It turns out that more bleak is not crypto. Oh my gosh. Okay, 139. It is so hot. It's so hot. You know how it is in Maine. You put on that stove. I showed you guys what I have on my desk. I have my water. You go from being freezing cold, right? And then you just like pack that stove, and then it's so hot. So that I'm a little bit warm. But I got into my hotness. All right. So that was a very long rant, as I like to do. And What do I want to do now? I want to get into the vision. Um, what it looks like to, I won't say center blockchain technology or cryptocurrency technology in this project, but yeah, what does it look like to kind of center it? Because it's just feels very futile to just cover all the news, all the local news, and cry and boohoo about the problems. It's very depressing. It's very depressing. And so what's going to be more interesting is to go ahead and bring what I believe, and maybe I'll convince you, is a potential solution, and just right from Jump Street, just right from the inception of this, weave that in, because it just doesn't really make sense probably to talk about this project, the Rural Rapid Response Network, and just like add crypto as a solution later if it doesn't, I mean, depending on what happens there, right? Instead, it's like, let's just bring it on board right now. Maybe that will discourage a lot of people from engaging with this idea, taking this idea seriously, or taking what we're trying to do seriously. I think that when it comes to the demographics that live and breathe here and that we're fighting for, I know, this technology is very foreign, and it's techie, and it's, not interesting. It's certainly not as fun as sparring on X over politics. So I'm prepared that, it's just not going to be very attractive to spend time on this for a lot of people, maybe for a really long time. So I'll try to pace myself so I can, just do what I don't know. I could just try to keep showing up. So far, in fact, let me just update you. The last meeting, the week before last, we talked a lot about this aquaculture lease ordinance that's happening in my town, and I had questions about what's going on here. There's this nonprofit that's been going around to all these towns and proposing this ordinance, etc. So I'll just say that I did go to the public hearing, and we're voting on it in our annual meeting next week. I hope we vote it down. I'll let you know. But I was pleased to see, yeah, a lot of people, the townspeople were very suspect and were asking, I think, all the questions that I had. So I think the people who come to the meeting versus the number of people who show up to vote. This will be my first year going through this, so I don't know. We'll see. But it certainly was gratifying from my perspective to see that others had were voicing the same hesitancy. People who obviously know a lot better than I do because they're here. So I felt like, all right, I'm not way off base here. Some of my concerns. So I wanted to update you all on that. There's like the crows cock-a-doodle-doo all day. Another thing we talked a little bit about, a nearby town meeting that I went to, and just, I mean, what this is basically a list of grants and projects that have been funded during the period of 2007 to 2024, nearly $14 million. On the one hand, we want to celebrate this because this represents a big success for the folks who were involved in securing these resources. And, it's hard to imagine a small town that without this 14, I mean, that's a lot of money. But herein lies the problem. the vulnerability of that model as at the moment, all this freezing of grant funding. And then it's so helpful that we have a governor who wants to try to have a showdown with Trump to his face. I mean, really? Is that selfish or is that smart? So we have to face facts. And we can face the facts of what's happening to the funding, and we can sue people in court, and we can march, and we can scream and fight and all of that. You can want to resist it. Okay. I mean, of course, I understand how it looks. I'm the one who's been saying, who came on here, and I've been talking about this is going to hurt. Like, this is going to smart. We're going into, the government is going to, I think the government, we are in for a world of hurt. We are. And I'm just saying, hey, that's okay. We were hurting. We've been hurting for a super long time. We've got to change the way things work. And having all of this essential function and operation happening through these nonprofits, the fact that federal dollars being pulled back, the fact that funding shrinks, for that to devastate our lives, I think that is telling us something. I'm not going to get into, the deficit and all of those problems, because instead we are going to focus on what we're going to do about it, our citizen adjacent action, and that we have a plan. We have a plan so that as things fall down, as Rome crumbles, we are going to be all right. So part of that means we read our local papers. We understand what is going on, who's on first, what are the issues. We go out into our communities. We attend the meetings. We want to be a presence that is consistent and available, and not just there to point fingers and argue and raise holy hell. We want to be constructive. We want to be empathetic. And when we do that, when we get off the screen, when we make the effort, I'm sure those of you who are already doing that will agree that it humanizes, the actual people who can be the target of a lot of rage and who are the punching bags for problems and frustrations that are not really their fault or in their power or control. So 100%, the Rural Rapid Response Network activity starts with ourselves. It starts with us finding out about our local towns, how they're governed, and leveling up our own knowledge base. And a couple weeks ago, we also talked about this thing where, here's a great resources document from a kind of working waterfront meeting that I went to. And it is so hard to identify and navigate resources. This is a wonderful list of emergency assistance and management, funding for disaster response, funding for municipal resilience work, planning tools, tools for coastal landowners, social resilience, statewide groups, climate information. I mean, this is a Google Doc. So there's actually all these hyperlinks for, God, I mean, my eyes bleed. I just look at this and I can't even read it. And so what's come up in a lot of my research is this gap between resources that may be available and the time that people have to both, so from the perspective of the working waterfront in Maine that received a real heavy destructive blow from a series of storms. How you're meant to continue to operate your business, or if you're a homeowner, to take care of your basic necessities and your family, when it probably takes a full-time person, like an entire staff person's and 40-hour-a-week job could be, just to figure out the deadlines, the programs that are available, how to apply for this with FEMA, what they need to submit, on and on and on and on. So this is an area that is deeply problematic. There's a tie back to some of the policy questions, but for the time being, from our perspective, uh, the front line of people in the Rural Rapid Response Network, those who are taking, I guess, agency within the project, we want to be informed, and that includes understanding this web of resources and how to approach that, and particularly now being on top of how that's changing, what funding is going away, what is it going to mean if there's no Department of Education and the states are directly funded from the federal government for how to do their schools. Who's even thinking about that in the states? If the government gets rid of FEMA, which is something that President Trump mentioned in his first few days of the office, talking about how inefficient the model is, how it's just been failing, and that, in his mind, that money should go directly to the states. And, the beauty of being involved in this work is, say for myself, I went to a meeting and, our county head of emergency management was there and gave a presentation. I could listen to him. I was sitting, this far from him, and I felt confidence in this man. I mean, he was very, his integrity, his capability, his command. I would very much like to see him get more money and not have to deal with FEMA. As we've sat in these meetings with the commission, the state commission on resiliency, infrastructure, and rebuilding, the legislation. So their interim report was published in November. The final report is going to be published in May. We have legislation, emergency legislation. I believe they gave it the number one title. The first bill implements some of the recommendations. And what is a consistent theme is that resources are needed just to navigate bureaucracy. Because of the dependency, because of where we are in our history, the states don't know how to function without the resources coming from the bureaucracy. And what is sorely missing is our own capacity to finance ourselves, to finance all of the needs, the disinvestment, the corruption, all the things that have left our rural communities looking the way they do. And I will say that it's an exciting moment to take a stand here, because there have been demographics and groups of people who have been isolated from a certain set of behaviors, a certain set of agendas. And we're so late stage, we're so end of empire in this moment that no one is safe. The ivory tower is on fire, the peasants are coming for you. And so I think we can expand the coalition. I really do. Expand the coalition to where people who felt like there were rules or benefits or protections that they had, and they don't have to worry about some of this honesty and some of the, the real things that aren't working for most people. I think if we can carve out a space that's depoliticized, because it's, as soon as you want to just go head to head with somebody about what they believe in their heart, it's like conversation over, oops, done. So if instead our time and our objectives are around the things that we can build and put in place that solve the problems, I mean, then we'll be heroes. It just won't even matter who we vote for because it's like, the pen has no political party. The pen just works or it doesn't, right? So we want to understand this tool. We want to understand, can it be used to write a love letter? And is it better than a pencil? Right? So I mean that's also that's the other side of the metaphor. When we talk about blockchain and cryptocurrency, yeah, it's like it's only good for money laundering, gambling, and like the worst degeneracy. It's like it is very good for that. I mean, it is exceedingly well at that. But that is not all that it's good for. But it's got to take, I mean, it's going to take human agency to pick up the pen and write the love letter instead of the hate note. So that's what we can do. That's what we can do. And that's what I want to do with this project. As absolutely insane as that sounds, like you are just such a glutton for punishment. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. So with that entree, that's segue. That's a segue. It's 1:56. We're getting to the top of the first hour. We've got one more hour to go, and I'm going to use every minute of it. Flies that come through the cracks in the window. Like, why aren't black flies dead at this time of year? I just don't know. I'm just vacuuming them all up in my dustbuster. You should see my dustbuster. It's like ladybugs and stink bugs and black flies all buzzing around in my dustbuster making noise. It's pretty terrible. Okay, so let me take a little bit more water. Let me cool off. Whew. Oh, how's everybody today? It's rough. Every day is so rough. We fight. We look for the light at the end of the tunnel. Okay. I want to now let's see, for maybe 10 minutes, I want to show you a couple things to do with. I'm just gonna say it, crypto. So hard. Just want to hide. And actually, I should tell you about my t-shirt. I should tell you about my t-shirt. Oh, I'm getting very warm. Yes, the t-shirt, Air Swap. I got this t-shirt in 2018 at a cryptocurrency, Ethereum blockchain conference in Brooklyn, in Bushwick, Brooklyn. And this project called Air Swap at the time may have been one of the first concepts around trading in a decentralized way, a way that you could swap digital assets without needing to go to an exchange like a Coinbase or your broker. And it's a pretty basic concept that I think points toward a new dawn of liberty. And so, yeah, it's pretty helpful to remember what things were like then, which felt so futuristic and sci-fi. I mean, it's like the brain just every day was like, oh my gosh, what an unbelievable new frontier this is. And things like what AirSwap was proposing to do, yeah, I mean, it was like, no, you can never do that. You'll never have, there were all these reasons why the idea just seemed really impractical. And fast forward to now, I won't get too nerdy or techie about this, but fast forward to now to think that this concept is so bread and butter now. I mean, the complexity and the dimension of this industry has changed by so many multiple magnitudes. There's like an expression I'm grasping for. Um, and so this t-shirt I wanted to wear today to insist that I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed. I'm not a money launderer. I'm not I'm not in favor of so much, but I'm looking past all of that. And there are a few projects that I have known about and I've been involved in. And I want to start talking about them. I believe they can be the building blocks of what we want to do here, what we want to do, what we better do. We better figure out where the financing, how we're going to finance everything at a state level, at a county level, at a town level. And what we're talking about has to be better, right? I mean, it can't just be a new version of the same old thing that's going to just allow us to swap rulers. We're just going to go from this king everyone's talking about to this tyrant. It's like, no, we're not going through all of this. Just to do the same old thing with a new package, the same old thing that exploits, extracts, manipulates, lies. We're not in this just to make it cheaper for the bankers, just to make it cheaper for Goldman Sachs to continue to do God's work, as Lloyd Blankfein said. No, that's not why we're here. So that's the story of my shirt and why I wore it today, because I was gonna, come out and admit to you guys that, hang on. Okay, I'm sharing my screen. Okay. That, contrary to popular sentiment, I think we should talk about crypto. Jesus, take the wheel. So I want to talk about it. I want to talk about it as utility, as technology, as something useful for us to achieve our goals, not for financial speculation, not for gambling, and all that madness. There's 3 projects that I want to talk to you about, and that I think can be tremendous building blocks for taking, concepts that we've had with us in our communities forever. Things like co-ops, things like local currency, things like mutual aid societies. There's nothing new under the sun, right? There is a model for all of the things that we're talking about, but there's like an extra capacity here. There's an unlock. I often like to think of Bitcoin and this industry as something that we discovered, like a principle of science, a principle of nature that we discovered, as opposed to something that's been strictly invented, kind of like did we discover electricity, or did we just learn enough and develop technologies to harness something that's timeless? And so that's what I like to that's how I think about this industry, blockchain, cryptocurrency. I think of it as an expression of things that have always been true. That have always been true. It's just a new form. And in this case, the idea is that it's a newer version, or it's an iteration that possibly can help us really move the needle on the zero sum dynamics and systems that have really built up and metastasized in our world, and that there can be and will be what some people refer to as an infrastructure inversion, where the way that things are done in the world, yeah, we went from the analog to the digital with the computing era, and now we're entering this other phase with AI and blockchain. And let me tell you, there are a lot of really smart people who have been working on this for a long time, and they have big plans. And I don't know if all their plans match up with our best interest, but here's the opportunity for us. The opportunity for us is that, the nature of this thing, maybe, I don't know, I'm not promising anything, but maybe if we don't allow ourselves to be distracted or demoralized, or to eat ourselves alive or one another, maybe there's something here that we can grab onto. When we talk about the tools of what can we do with what we have, it's rumored that the technology is open source. That, what does that mean? It means anyone can use it. That many of these technologies just require, yes, an internet connection and some kind of computing device, a laptop, a phone, and not much else. And even sometimes the internet connection is not necessary when you want to really nerd out on this. And if that's true, it's potentially still has all of the capacity in the world to turn things, to be part of our tool set of turning things to our advantage, to make things to our advantage. So we don't want to be frightened. And there will be a battle once we get over this current battle for funding the government and the budget. I think the battle on regulation for this industry is going to be later. So there's work to do there to make sure that the ways in which we want to use these free tools, that it's legal and permissible for us to do that, and we're not going to be at risk of going to jail for just exercising, our right for free speech, our right of our property rights, our rights of privacy. I mean, there's a lot there, but I think for us to go ahead and just dive in now, to not be afraid of the stigma and not be discouraged by all the bad actors and all of the horrible ways that parts of this industry are affecting people's lives and their mental health, their emotional well-being, certainly their finances, all of that negativity. Let's just not let it destroy everything. It's already very destructive. Let's try. We might not succeed, and we might be very unpopular. At least it looks like we are not, under immediate threat of being labeled any number of bad things that could potentially lead to encounters with law enforcement that we don't want, just simply for trying to do the thing that we're here now to try to do the Rural Rapid Response Network. I mean, that was a problem over the past couple of years. It's like so many ideas, so many things, we couldn't do. Or, as an attorney, part of my work was, giving projects some advice around that. Like, what are your risks? How could you structure your project to avoid those risks in this time of, regulatory, regulation by enforcement, which basically means that there aren't laws. Our old laws don't apply to this new world because they were, primarily organized in like 100 years ago, the foundational aspects of them. And therefore, yeah, I mean, it was a pretty oppressive dynamic that I think people exploited, but that's another story. But the point being is that it is actually a great time to go ahead and dream the impossible dream, because we do that threat. And on another meeting, another session, I can get into some of that. I can break down, some of those issues around why was it threatening or dangerous to work in this industry for the past couple of years? Why did so many entrepreneurs set up their businesses outside the United States, leave the country? And yes, it's 100% responsible or contributing factor to the extreme negative things that we're seeing right now. The only thing that had a lane. So anyway, I feel as I'm talking to you, like encouraging myself, like, yes, this is a good idea. It is a good idea to bring it out of the closet, to bring it out of the shadows. And because in fact, if we have use cases, which has been the problem, we can't talk to policymakers. We can't be convincing that some of these things should be allowed because we don't have any examples of where it's not being used for all of these nefarious reasons. We don't have any proofs of concept. We certainly don't see it on our timeline. It's out there. I know it's out there. The way that this technology is making things possible for people. It's life and death. It's helping people with life, and it's often associated offshore. So for a number of reasons, but also, I would say that rural America is as third world as it gets. And so we are exactly the kind of place that needs this technology, that needs to, find something to adopt, to experiment with, to test. And I know that that's, daunting, because it's still very early, and these protocols, the technology and how they work and all the concepts are still just way too complicated, way too nerdy, and their security is not great. The usability, the legibility, it's all still extremely not ready for prime time. But that being said, I think that it's worthwhile for the Rural Rapid Response Network, from its genesis, from its origin. I can't even help it. That we just might as well, because otherwise, to just do another thing, another grassroots project, another social welfare organization that doesn't have something radically different to bring to the table, is probably, just a waste of time. It's just a vanity project at that point. But if we can look at Juicebox, for example, fund your thing, join thousands of projects using Juicebox to fund, operate, and scale their ideas and communities transparently on the internet. Sorry, not the internet, Ethereum, which is a particular public blockchain. and I wanted us to watch a little bit of this intro video, which we will. Oh, wait, I have to change. I have to switch the screen. So we're gonna oh, hi. Hey, Todd. I like thinking of crypto as digital agreements, creating the possibility for new, more meaningful agreements that are rooted in dignity and the unique gifts of individuals and communities. Oh, I love that because that's exactly the kind of thinking and the talking points and the narrative, the languaging that we've got to start using. It's elevating the discourse and the conceptual understanding of these things, taking it beyond just a digital asset, right? Or a financial product. If you're an art lover, like conceptual art or philosopher, you also probably gravitated to this space because of how it's profound in the way that Todd you just talked about. And yeah, I think that's brilliant, and it's the type of way that we've got to language what we're doing. Um, and Todd, you'll also appreciate, I think what I'm where this is going with the Rural Rapid Response Network is that it's like anchoring the potential not in the technology itself, like not fetishizing crypto, not making crypto like this idol that's just going to do this magic thing, but realizing that no, we want to anchor in who we are as humans. We want to anchor in our spaces, in our places, with each other, with the problems that we have. um, and it probably took this past cycle for many of us who've been in the industry to want to reorient, and hopefully where the industry itself is, where the technology, the wonderful people who've just continued to build and work toward this thing that they believe in more than money or more than status or more than, I mean, that there's really a principle here that is the reason that the technologies being built. I mean, I still believe that, and because they're working so hard and because it's so difficult and demoralizing, it's like why you don't actually hear from them, the people who are really, the heroes and the doing good things and working hard. The scammers and the bad actors naturally are the ones that have time to fill our timelines, to fill the media, to fill the atmosphere with all of their shenanigans. So yeah, it's just taking like a really long time. It takes a lot of patience, and it takes a lot of, whatever you need to do to, touch grass and feel better and come back at it. So that's also a great segue. Speaking of just making some adjustments, I've been threatening this for a year to be more active on a social network that is built on the Ethereum blockchain. It's a technology called Farcaster, and one application is called Warpcast. And so I am going to use Warpcast for my online addiction while I take a bit of a personal break from my personal X account. So I'm at FHO Money on Warpcast. Well, Farcaster, but yeah, it doesn't matter. That's what's interesting about this application. We'll talk more about it on another meeting. But it has some exciting potential. So I'm introducing 3 building blocks that we're going to use with Kianga Ellis projects. So Kianga Ellis projects is going to kind of dog food how all of these things can come together and be adopted and be relevant for the actual crisis that we have in rural America. And particularly, I'm here in Maine, and I was born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts, and I have lifelong multi-generational roots in New York State. So for Kianga's projects, which has its origin story back to 2011, that's for another time. That's the regional focus. So it's regional focused. However, the local policy, local, hyper-local work will be where I physically am in Maine. But we have in mind that geography from Maine through Massachusetts over to central upstate New York. And Kianga Ellis projects as a project, we're going to use Juicebox, Farcaster, and who could guess what the third what's the third project? What could it be? Oh, I don't know. What's the third project, Kiaga? Ta-da! Sky Job Money. The most hated. No, it's well loved, it's well hated by haters. Because haters are gonna hate. And builders we're just gonna build. So in future meetings, we're gonna talk more about Juicebox, Farcaster, and the sky ecosystem and what that is. I'm not even going to click through to anything that's on here right now, because it's too much information for right now. Okay, we've got 38 minutes, and let's do this. Let's watch a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes of a Juicebox tutorial. No. Okay, here we're gonna do 5 minutes. We're gonna do a 5-minute Farcaster video. And you all will have to help me as we go along. I want to try and talk about this stuff in a way that, you don't have to know anything about blockchain or crypto. You don't have to know anything at all, what it is. You can be completely, skeptical or feel whatever you feel. My intention is to, I'm going to try to communicate, like, kind of like what Todd pointed out. Talk about it in non-nerd terms and talk about it in terms that correlate with things that make sense, that seem worthwhile to be involved in. So I want to do that just to give a little brief intro to make it more tangible when I say that this project will incorporate blockchain technology as part of our solution and how we do all the things that we say we want to do and that need to be done. And just to give you a taste of what does that even look, smell, feel, or sound like. and I'm not sure. Again, you can give me feedback of how much this makes sense at this stage, what I'm going to share. And so we have plenty of time, and I will do that in these meetings as well. Like, educate, educate, explain, not for the purposes of investing and speculation, but specifically for this. What is the utility? Can we use this to solve our problems? And that is what we are going to be interested in here. And solving the problem, just this goes without saying, solving the problem isn't buying Bitcoin now and it goes 100x, right? It's all, money is actually not usually the problem. Like the lack of X amount of money is usually not the problem. Having more money seems like the answer when you need it, but usually there's other things that need to be fixed, and it's like opening up a blockage. If you have a blockage, you have an artery that's blocked, so your heart is not getting blood. Do you really need more blood to come at that blocked artery? I mean, I think I'm not a doctor, obviously. I think like the more blood can flow, but it's not going to get. I mean, it's not going to get this. The artery's blocked, so either it's going to just blow up the heart entirely. It's going to be catastrophic, or the worst case scenario, it's just not going to get the blood where it needs. You got to clear out the artery, and then the blood will just flow. That's how I think about finance, and so we're not so much going to focus on, oh, we need X amount of money, and that's going to solve the problem. It's like the architecture is broken. The design is flawed. And so if we fix the design, we fix the architecture, and maybe we have some new tools to try that, then the circulation can just happen. So that's how we want to think about everything that's being said about crypto, even though of course we're going to talk about money, but it's not with this idea that it's going to be a magic pill or get rich quick, or again, that just some amount of money, some amount of ROI is return on investment, turning X amount of cryptocurrency from $100 to $1,000. Like that is not the central focus. Like that's not what we need to solve for. We have to solve for design. We have to solve for the tools. We have to solve for right incentives. And then, then the liquidity flows in a way that's healthy, that keeps a patient alive, and that, keeps you from getting gangrene and losing a limb, all that, right? Okay. So let's watch these 5 minutes about Farcaster. A lot of people right now, are looking for a new place, a new public square. And I understand. Oh, also Kianga Ellis Projects is now on Blue Sky. I created a Kianga Ellis Projects account on Blue Sky. I don't expect to personally, I don't think we'll be posting anything there for the time being. I know very little about Blue Sky other than a lot of people in the art world are flocking there as an alternative to Instagram. I know obviously that a lot progressives and liberals who've left X are doing Blue Sky. I've heard that it's some kind of, is it decentralized in some way? I don't know anything about the technology of that, but I recall something about it being decentralized, as people are concerned that, you build up community, you build up value if you are a content creator, or you're able to use a social platform to earn a living. And we all are just tired of being the product. We're tired of being exploited. We're tired of our data being weaponized against us. And so Farcaster is a technology, and its application Warpcast, another kind of social network that is, trying to solve for all the reasons people hate or people are dissatisfied with the current Web 2 social media landscape. And I'll play these 5 minutes, which just talk a little bit about, at a high level, some of the dynamics around social media applications, and it's a preview of why adopting Farcaster to build community and this kind of new approach to social anchored within a blockchain and crypto infrastructure is pretty exciting. And yeah, okay, I'll stop talking. I'll just play this now. Hang on.
By setting up the 4 problems that we're trying to solve with Farcaster. All right, I want to start off by setting up the 4 problems that we're trying to solve with Farcaster. So let's begin by defining a social network with our protagonists, Alice, Bob, Claire, and David. Now, a social network is one where people can send different kinds of messages to each other. And they might be text messages like hello world. They might be images like image.png that different people are sending, or different types of media. These things can also be actions like Claire likes Alice's post, for example. And every social network you can think of can basically be reduced to a set of users and actions that they perform on other users. Snapchat is effectively a network where the images are ephemeral. They last only for a certain amount of time, and they're permissioned so that only a specific set of people can see them. Now, with a decentralized social network, we'll add one constraint on top of this model. We'll say that a decentralized social network is one where people can also use different applications to actually talk to each other. So Alice, for example, might use Snapface, a popular social networking client, while Claire and David might actually end up using FacePro 2000, a different and more advanced social networking client. And the important thing is that all of these users can communicate with each other irrespective of the apps that they're using. Now, the problems that we sort of face when dealing with decentralized social network is the first one is a problem of identity. So an identity in a social network is often a unique identifier, like a username or an ID number, like @Alice, for example, along with a bunch of non-unique stuff. So this might be a display name, a profile picture, a verification checkmark. And this whole bundle of stuff, when it shows up on someone's profile, is how you recognize that they're the Alice that you think they're supposed to be. Now, in a decentralized social network, you need to be able to claim an identity in a way such that no one else controls this identity. So it's important that Alice is able to sort of jump between Snapface and FacePro and continue using her same identity of Alice, which means that Snapface itself doesn't control this identity. Alice is the only one that controls this. So decentralized social networks must be able to issue decentralized identities as well that map to real-world entities. The second problem that we face is one of authentication, which is that when Alice creates a message, it's important that everybody can trust that this message, hello world, came from her. So if Claire or David receive this message, for example, they need to be able to authenticate the message because it comes through a bunch of untrusted parties along the way, and they need to know that none of them have tampered with this message as it's been in flight. And so that's a very important property when you have, hundreds or thousands of different services and applications all handling and passing messages back and forth between each other. The third problem you run into is one that we call availability. So in a social network, you can imagine that there are millions of users creating lots and lots of posts. And let's say someone else wants to launch a new social network, a social networking application. So they want to launch a new app over here and connect to the network. Now, it's very important that this application can guarantee that if Alice jumps over here, she's still able to see all of these different messages that have been generated on other social networks. That is, the data is always available no matter what application she switches to. If a new app wasn't able to guarantee this, Alice wouldn't switch, and the network would become less decentralized as a result. And there's a fundamental tension here because if users can generate an infinite number of messages, let's say David generates 1 billion messages, then Alice or this new application can't realistically index all of this stuff. And so availability requires making sure that the data can move quickly between applications, but also ensuring that there are reasonable constraints on the size and volume of that data changing so that the network can actually become reasonably available. And the last problem we'll call as one of consistency, which is social networks have certain rules, right? So for example, our social network might say that every user can like a post only once. And so what happens if Claire on her application actually sets up 2 different messages that say that she likes Alice's post at 2 different times? This creates a problem because Alice using Snapface might decide that the first one is valid and use this timestamp, whereas Bob using a different client might actually say that the last one is the valid timestamp. And so when using these different networks, these 2 users get a different view of what happened because each of their applications has had to make independent decisions on enforcing the rules of the network. And this is not ideal because it leads to divergent state. So we also want a network that can enforce certain rules of consistency and make sure that everybody agrees on the same message and discards discards conflicting messages. So these are the 4 core problems: identity, authentication, availability, and consistency. And we'll talk in future videos about how Farcaster solves these particular problems.
Whoa. Okay, so hopefully that was sort of legible and seemed relevant to the flow of the conversation. Yeah, it's technical, but it gets at communication. And this is a #1 problem as we're thinking about what the rural rapid response network needs to be. What are some of the key pain points in rural areas, certainly in emergency? We want to be more than just emergency response. We are talking about an all the time steady state of whatever the rural rapid response network is going to be, that it's always available, it's always operating, and communication is big. And we're struggling now in the Patriot community for Maine and the demographics of Maine, which are old. I think we're the oldest demographic in the country. So you've got folks that are on Facebook, of course, and then some on X. Yeah, I mean, we're fractured. And thinking about social networks, thinking about how this technology, where we are today in terms of Web 2, so say the social layer that we have now, and we've had for 15 or so years, 20 years more. What is not working for us, and what do we need? What are we going to need to add that's going to bridge us in rural? I mean, all of Maine is basically rural as well, so it's the perfect origin place for this network in terms of rural America. Obviously, there's some cities that are along the coast that are more populous, but pretty much, vacation land is very rural. So having Farcaster where it is today as an app and its maturity feels like to me as good a time as any to go ahead and lean in there. And that it also, at the same time that it's potentially solving the pain points of our legacy Web 2.0, walled, corporate controlled, and monetized social networks that we have right now, it has this other feature, is that it's going to be natively operational with the financial layer, the internet, the finance that is native to the internet, which is all that crypto is. It's magic internet money. When I tell people what do I do for a living, like what's my practice area, I will, because the stigma is real in this industry. I will say that I work in internet finance and regulation for internet currencies. This is, believe it or not, people don't make the same. I don't know if some people associate that and they think, oh, is that like Bitcoin? But it's funny how language is so powerful because they don't have a mental model. They've not heard those words put together in that way. Internet currencies is not familiar, and so it sounds very exotic. And it's like I get respect when I say I work on regulation and compliance and governance for internet currencies. Like, oh, well, that sounds very legit. So this application, social media that's being built natively on the blockchain, open source, is going to solve, or it's trying to solve for, and I think it's going in the right direction around current pain points in how we're doing social media. But then it's also going to potentially benefit from having the money layer. That's what Web3 is. It's like, the first internet when I was coming out of law school came, late 90s. And then we had, Web 2, which was the social layer, which was, connected all of us and communication, information. And then what's called Web 3, where we're moving into with open source, open public blockchains, cryptocurrency, and, of course, AI is coming in hot. I mean, it's here. It's here. All of that is this third wave where economics can flow at the speed of light, at the speed of sound, at the speed of the internet, in the same way that now we have this connection with our ability to just sort of communicate and be present with one another. So first thing, taking advantage of what's being built on Farcaster feels good. Feels like we should do that. And then let me show you a couple of minutes about Juicebox. So Juicebox is exciting because it is a permissionless tool. It's another pen that people are able to use to fund their projects, basically. It's really that simple. It's simple what it does, but it's not simple like how it does what it does. And it's definitely not simple to use, but Kyung-il's projects, I am sort of familiar with it. And so I'm adding this as number 2 in our toolbox that we will use to support the work of the Rural Rapid Response Network. So let's watch a few minutes of this and hopefully just give you a flavor for like at least just what it looks and sounds like when I say that we want to look toward blockchain technology, Web3, crypto economies. We're not giving up. Here's a little bit of what that means, what it looks like.
I'll give you a quick rundown on how you can use Juicebox to make your project successful. And along the way, I'll teach you what Juicebox is, how it works, and why you should actually consider running your project on Juicebox if you haven't already. Juicebox is a way for you to fund, operate, and scale your project on the Ethereum blockchain. And when I say your project, that could be a business or a charitable cause, but that can also be a DAO, a crowdfunding campaign, or just about anything else, because Juicebox gives you a very flexible set of tools for managing just about any kind of community and their finances over time. The platform, was launched in June of 2021, and I'm recording this video in November of 2023. So in that roughly 2-year period, we've seen 1,235 projects launched on the platform. And those projects have raised over $178 million across close to 60,000 payments. And some of those projects have done particularly impressive things. So one example I'd like to point to is Assange DAO. This is a project which was doing a crowdfunding campaign, and they were raising funds for Julian Assange's legal defense. And they were able to raise over $50 million in, I want to say something like 3 days or maybe a week, this very short period of time. It was very impressive. Another cool example is Juicebox DAO. So Juicebox DAO is actually the group which builds and maintains Juicebox and the ecosystem around it. And Juicebox DAO itself runs on the platform. So it's the first project on the platform. And what's cool about it is that all of the bookkeeping and payouts and payroll and revenue management and token, all of that stuff happens on Juicebox. So it's kind of a proof of concept that you're able to coordinate a decent number of people and manage some pretty complex tasks using this platform. One last project I'd like to point to is MoonDAO. MoonDAO is a project which raised funds to send someone into outer space, and they were successful at that. So they sent someone into outer space. They got a contract with Blue Origin, and since then they've been working on decentralized and open access space research, which has been pretty incredible to watch, as well as some other cool stuff. By the way, that link at the top is a link to our website where you can see some of the other projects which have used Juicebox. So if you go to juicebox.money/project, you'll see all sorts of interesting things people have been working on. A few more things to note about Juicebox before we move on. One is that it's community owned. So Juicebox, as I mentioned earlier, is operated by a DAO. So there's no company, there's no CEO, there's no board of directors. It's a decentralized autonomous organization. And you can almost think of it like a digital co-op, where people participate, and every couple of weeks, people will vote on where they think the community should go. And then, people vote on that stuff, and the community does that. And what's cool is that Juicebox is actually owned by, contributors, people who are making projects, people who are supporting the community in other ways. So it really is kind of this like community-owned platform. The second thing to know about Juicebox is that it's permissionless. So you don't need anyone's permission to make a project. Anyone can make a project and do whatever they want with it. And even if Juicebox DAO, for example, does not like your project, there's no way for them to shut your project down or take your funds away or change your project's rules without your permission. So you really do own your project and the funds within it. And the third thing to note about Juicebox is that it runs on the Ethereum blockchain. So it's not like we have some backend service somewhere that's calculating everyone's balances and stuff like that. It's actually running as a collection of smart contracts on the Ethereum blockchain. Now, those of you who are already familiar with Ethereum can skip forward to the next chapter, but for those of you who aren't or need a little refresher, I'll go over some of the basics and what I mean by smart contracts. So the first thing to know about the Ethereum blockchain is that it's kind of like any other blockchain, right? Like Bitcoin, for example, is a very famous blockchain where you can send Bitcoin and receive Bitcoin. So Ethereum does something similar where you can send this token called Ether or ETH. So you can send and receive ETH. But one thing that makes it different from a lot of other blockchains is that you can also create these things called smart contracts. So smart contracts are basically computer programs that you upload to the blockchain, and they actually will keep running on the blockchain as long as the blockchain continues to exist. So those smart contracts can, process text, do anything a normal computer program can. They can send and receive ETH. They can create their own tokens. They can do all sorts of stuff. So you have those smart contracts, and that's actually how the Juicebox protocol works. The Juicebox platform is kind of built on top of a collection of these smart contracts, which you can read about more on our online documentation. The third thing to note is that although the Ethereum blockchain is decentralized to kind of, pay people for keeping the blockchain running, whenever you interact with the blockchain, you have to pay a gas fee, and that's paid in Ether. Usually it's pretty small, but it's something worth knowing, right? So if you want to interact with the Juicebox protocol, because you're interacting with those smart contracts, you have to pay a gas fee. And to do that, you'll need a wallet. So wallets are, this computer program. It's kind of like a browser extension, and it holds funds, which is why you call it a wallet. But also you use it for interacting with smart contracts and things like that. So some resources I recommend taking a look at. The first is ethereum.org, where you can learn more about Ethereum and how it works. Next is metamask.io. There you can get a free wallet. And the last one is coinbase.com. There you can get some Ether or other cryptocurrencies. And you can also get those cryptocurrencies in MetaMask if you have just like a credit card or your bank account or something like that.
So that was recorded over 2 years ago. Still all relevant, although there have been quite a lot of advancements in the technology of the Juicebox project, and I think that's what makes it potentially useful for us to try. And I'm starting to try to get more information to get more of the details, because they've been so busy working that there aren't new videos. They've been heads down, and it's really a very I believe Juicebox is a real model of the kind of work and project that is a beacon of value. We're not all Julian Assange, obviously, so those big numbers are not easy to come by. But what I think will be exciting for us to do here with Kyunggel's projects is try to use these tools. Try to use these tools for our needs. And what is that going to look like? We've got 9 minutes. So in 9 minutes, we are obviously not going to we're not going to actually work on the slides. That will be the focus for maybe not Thursday, because if I don't go to Augusta, we'll do it Thursday. And if Thursday doesn't work for whatever reason, we'll try for next Tuesday to kind of bullet point where we are. So in the last few minutes, this was what we had written the last time we were in this document. I'm going to change a few things. I'm going to actually change this from the Rural Rapid Response Network ELI5 to the KEP ELI5, because what I decided in terms of meat on the bones, operate the Rural Rapid Response Network, is that Kyunggel's projects should become an organization. That's the first thing. And the purpose of the organization will be to create and support the operations of the Rural Rapid Response Network. So we'll put some structure around Kyungga coming on the live stream and trying to do some stuff and needing it to be more than me, needing it to have some focus and some meat on the bones and some structure and all of that. Yeah, because there's just no way to just guess what the Rural Rapid Response Network should be, could be. It needs to be developed over time. It needs to start with an inquiry. It needs to be done out in the open. It needs to involve conversations in real space, in real communities with people. And it needs to, dog fooding is this term that we use in crypto. I don't know, as other industries where you're using your own product to find product market fit. And so it's particularly when we talk about using blockchain, crypto economy, the tools of Web3. There's no there's no substitute from, you just have to experiment. You kind of, it's too early, it's too untried, it's too nascent to just design everything kind of offline and create a beautiful white paper and then voila, this is what we're going to build and do, and they will come. Many of us have tried that. It's just not a good way to approach this new industry as a potentially a solution. It is radically changing, rapidly changing, and I would say that it's particularly from now until we do get the new regulations, until we do have the legal clarity and the legal certainty around what the compliance environment is going to be. So many things that until Congress acts are still in the gray area. It doesn't really make sense to force it with what we want to do with Rural Rapid Response Network. So my thinking, and I'm open to your ideas, is that Keonga-Ellis Projects, KEP25, should organize itself a little bit to use the tools in the manner in which we may think could be adopted by other people in our network. And so to the extent that we operate on Farcaster as a place for social, utilize Juicebox to raise funds to support, to fund other projects. And then through that learning and that expertise of operating, we'll talk about Sky ecosystem another time, but through that, then we'd also be in a position to advise, train, and counsel others to set up their other parts of the network, to set up their own juice boxes. And when it comes down to, again, in our next meeting, we'll go into that. When we answer these questions, who are we rapidly responding to? What, and I don't know. I do believe, the network has to be anchored in real space, and that from inception, having a physical location in our communities is essential. So we will have that here in Deer Isle. We will have that. But the extent to which it needs to be focused on art, it may be just a legacy of what Keonga-Ellis Projects has been up until this point. So I'll just bracket that. Maybe that just muddies the waters to refer to art spaces in particular. But when I think about this bullet, for example, limitations of geography, time, and finance, and what we hear in Maine, the state is huge, and part of the reason the people have been so underrepresented and so poorly looked after, everyone who's not a coastal, ruling class type of a person, has been absolutely not looked after. And why it's so hard to organize is because of the distance, distance it takes to get anywhere and come together. And so naturally, when we talk about blockchain, this is how we overcome geography, time, and all of that, all the physical barriers. And so right there, we can see the value of saying, yeah, from day one, that's something we can do, right? That's something that we can do from day one with what we have. So much we can do with just our time and these tools. And we're not going to neglect the local specificity. We're not going to neglect being together, coming together. As alien as these tools and the language is, hopefully that's also part of our job here, is to talk about it in, we call normie terms, and Todd, like what you called out about these digital assets, or these digital, I don't want to call them assets, I need another word, but these intangibles that they have materiality online, that could be useful for us in ways we haven't yet explored. So we want to let's spend our time like digging into that. These are the things that we know we can do today with what we have. It takes time, and maybe we can raise a little bit of money so that we can fund the people in our network who need to learn and can help bridge the barriers for others to learn about this technology, because it does take these cryptocurrencies to operate. And so that's maybe something we can focus on at the KEP level, is that our fundraising will then help provide grants to people in other communities, in the digital agreements, housing for, all of that. The capacity layer, the knowledge layer, the people who are going to need to learn about this and who can translate back. We're at 3:00. I'm going to wrap this up, but who can translate back so that so that there's not a group of people who, Boulder, Colorado. Okay, well, we have to more on that. Maybe you can come on as a guest, Todd, and you can tell us about that. Would you be up for that? Yes, we have to, though, include the people who are not in crypto. That's like the main takeaway. We've somehow got to open up the dialogue and the exploration and bring it to where regular people are, and take instruction from the real world, and then reflect back. Cryptocurrency in the industry has been just in its own microcosm, which is appropriate, in a sense. I mean, that's how something like this could only happen this way. But now, if it's going to, it's going to be adopted one way or the other. So that's the other thing. It's like, well, let's just get ahead of that. Let's instead of sitting around shaking or yelling at CNN or whatever. Here's the thing we can do instead of only having our mind melted on social media or feel like we're getting dunked in a hot bath of oil. Here's something constructive, and maybe can turn all of this into a feel-good story. So great. So Todd and I are going to chat offline. Todd, you're going to have to tell me. Okay, I'll DM you on X from at Kianga Ellis, and we can schedule that. That would be really fun. And I'll also post the other links where Kianga Ellis Projects is going to be kind of more actively engaging around this project. Once again, personally, I'm not going to be spending some time on X at FHO Money. If you're on Farcaster, look me up on there. Otherwise, if you're on X, continue to follow this channel at Kianga Ellis. Rumble, YouTube. We're a little bit of a hiatus on Instagram right now. Right now, it's just me. It's my passion project, so it's all a bit, DIY. So I think you all can understand and appreciate that. All right, 3 minutes over. I am signing off, and I thank you all who joined and those who might watch laters. And until next time, bye-bye.